So level 3 is what Dan McAdams calls self-narrative. So your self-narrative is the story you tell yourself about yourself. It's how you make sense of your journey and purpose in the world. I think that understanding someone's self-narrative, understanding your own self-narrative is the key to unlocking behavior. So when I'm with people, all I'm trying to do is figure out their self-narrative, because I know that if I can figure out what story they're telling themselves about themselves, how they're making sense of their own decisions, I understand all their decision-making. I understand their point of view. I understand where they're coming from. So one thing that I'm researching is, are there common self-narratives? So I'll give you an example of a common one. So a hero self-narrative is the most resilient self-narrative. This is when the story they tell themselves goes like this. I've had a lot of challenges. I've had a lot of burdens, and I've made mistakes, but with hard work and grit and smarts, I've overcome. They are telling that story over and over again. It's their life story, but it's their work story. It's their friend story. It's their partner story. It's their hiking story. Like, people who had that self-narrative, they're always like, every story is like, I showed up at Runyon Canyon and there was no parking, just no parking anywhere. But you know what? I figured it out. I found a secret spot behind the Dunkin' lot, and I was able to, like, everything is that self-narrative, because that's their framework for seeing the world. That is a very resilient self-narrative. One that's not so resilient is the victim self-narrative, right? This is someone, they have the same start as the hero, burdens, challenges, mistakes, but they weren't able to overcome. That all their hard work, all their grit, all their smarts, they just could not find a way out. When someone has a victim self-narrative, if you're in a relationship with someone who has a victim self-narrative, it's very frustrating because they feel the world is against them.
Yeah.
They feel they have no tools to get out. They often stop trying, and they feel unlucky. So one thing you can do for yourself, a little question if you want, if you're like, what's mine? Like, I think it's good for everyone to know their own self-narrative. And I'm working on like a set of questions to help someone unlock it. But the first one is, do you think you're lucky? If you're like resounding heck, full body, yes, I think I'm lucky, you're probably closer to a hero self-narrative. If you're like, I don't know if I'm lucky, that's leaning more towards a victim self-narrative. And there's other ones. There's a healer self-narrative. There's other ones that I think that are out there. But it's important to change your perceptions of luck, because research shows that people who think they're lucky actually see the world differently. They see more opportunities. There's a pretty famous study by Dr. Richard Wiseman, who brought people into his lab, and he asked them, do you think you're lucky? And he gave them a little like luck questionnaire to gauge where they fell on the luck scale. And then he gave them a challenge. He gave them a newspaper, and he asked them to count all the images in the newspaper. Everyone except one person who thought they were very lucky saw that on the second page of the newspaper, there was a giant ad that said, there are 43 images in this newspaper, stop counting. They literally opened the newspaper, saw the ad, and said to the researcher, there are 43 images in the newspaper. All of the unlucky people missed it. They did not see the ad, and they sat there counting every single image in the newspaper and got more wrong, right? Not only did it take them more time, but they actually missed images. Meaning your own perceptions of luck make you lucky or unlucky. If you think of yourself as unlucky, you are going to miss more opportunities. You get in your own way more often. Whereas if you think you're lucky, you literally see those opportunities more clearly.
So powerful. And you can extrapolate that, I'm sure, to other aspects, which are, do you think of yourself as healthy? Do you think of yourself as fundamentally unhealthy, which a lot of people do?
Yes.
And when you have that, you're like, well, I'm just an unhealthy person. I don't have healthy habits. Oh, it's harder for me to do because I'm not as healthy, or I'm not as disciplined, or I'm not as that. So these narratives, they shape our entire way of being, and our actions then follow based off how we talk to ourselves.
Yeah, I wonder, and again, I'm doing this research right now, could you think about the narratives for each area of your life? Like, what is your health self-narrative, right? Like, do you think of yourself as healthy or unhealthy? Is there a nuance there? Do you think of yourself as a body hacker? Like, even like that is a sort of self-narrative in its sense. How about your financial self-narrative? Your stories that you tell yourself about money, about savings, about earning. How about your family self-narrative or your romantic self-narrative? I think that your self-narratives are self-creating, right? Like the stories you're telling yourself are actually creating the stories you're telling yourself about yourself.
You know, so